Over the past couple of years, Hollywood has really failed to create content that captures audiences' attention. Time and time again, the activists working on projects shove a message down viewers' throats and it pushes so many people away, and then we don't monetarily support the content they're creating. But now Twisters has whipped up a huge storm with a record 80.5 million domestic opening only days after the director said that they were not preaching a message with this film and that they would not blame climate change for the mega tornadoes. I have a few different things that I want to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, I have to talk a lot on this channel about activists ruining content that does sound genuinely entertaining, and we all had a bad feeling about this Twisters movie because while they were trying to market it very similarly to the '94 film, at the same time, we know that Hollywood now is quite a different beast. There are so many activists running rampant within the industry who take movies that should just be genuinely fun and then they shove a message in your face. But right before release, we heard from the director that this was not his intention, and he talked about some of the, intentional decisions they made with this movie that really got people hyped, and it all turned out extremely well for them. So starting off with the Screen Rant article, it says the Twisters director Lee Isaac Chung explains why the summer action movie won't preach a message about climate change as an explanation for megatornadoes. Jan de Bont's Twister took viewers on a wild summer ride back in '94, roaring its way to 495 million at the box office and enduring status as a classic big budget disaster film. I have a lot of love and nostalgia for the '94 Twister movie, which was why I was really excited for Twisters. I know, yes, how many times can you do disaster movies and can you do mega tornado movies, but they are just very nostalgic to me and I do genuinely enjoy them, and it honestly is fantastic to see that they didn't try to shove a message in your face with this when they had a clear opportunity to do so. It says now 30 years after the first film became the Jaws of Tornadoes movies, the long-awaited Twister sequel is finally headed to theaters with Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones heading up the cast. Two very good actors and actresses. In my opinion, they really are kind of highlights in Hollywood right now, specifically Glenn Powell. And of course, then you get into other people he's worked with, like Sydney Sweeney. These are kind of the next set of movie stars that we are, I think, going to see pretty consistently. But it says Twisters is indeed set to deliver tornadoes aplenty, but one thing it won't serve up is a message about climate change as a cause for the tornadic activity, says the film's director, who explained why he doesn't believe it's his job to preach to his audience. I just wanted to make sure that with the movie, we don't ever feel like it is putting forward any message. I just don't feel like films are meant to be message-oriented. I think what we are doing is showing the reality of what's happening on the ground. We don't shy away from saying that things are changing. I wanted to make sure that we are never creating a feeling that we're preaching a message, because that's certainly not what I think cinema should be about. I think it should be a reflection of the world, and this is a fantastic statement because we know there are so many activists in the industry now who would have taken this as like a golden opportunity to preach a message about things like climate change and about how humans are killing the earth, but that is not what they decided to do here, and I do think it was a very smart direction, because you have somebody who's simply saying, I wanted to create really good cinema. And yes, there are still really good movies that come out, but they are very few and far between at this point. Maybe per year, we get like 3 to 4 really good pieces of content, if that, and that is being generous, let's be fair. And yeah, I mean, he is saying that he just doesn't feel like films are meant to be message oriented, and I think that this is going to win this director a lot of new fans who maybe didn't know who he was before or were not very well versed with his movies. But I think that judging by how well this film has done at the box office, boy oh boy, Hollywood should really take notes. This Hollywood Reporter article lays it out pretty well. It says Twister whips up huge storm with record 80.5 million domestic opening. It's talking about how it exceeded expectations, and the record breaking movie, playing in 4,151 theaters, easily boasts the top domestic opening ever for a natural disaster film, not adjusted for inflation. And it's the third biggest start of the year to date, behind Inside Out 2 and Dune Part 2, edging out Godzilla and Kong, The New Empire. Now, I do think that it is going to hold this position for quite a while. There are some other movies this year that are releasing that could take its place, like Alien Romulus, Deadpool and Wolverine, maybe even Borderlands. But for each of those movies, the estimates have dropped quite a bit from what they initially were, so we don't really know. But at the same time, if you really look at the money this is making, it's doing extremely well. It says Twisters arrives 28 years after Twister, the envelope pushing feature that broke ground for marrying visual effects with practical effects. It, of course, starred Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt. Of course, though, it ended its run with 494.5 million globally, which is insane. Now, of course, Hollywood Reporter is leading with the fact that it has opened with a record 80.5 million domestic, but if we look at the worldwide figures, it is also doing really well. It says the global total is at currently 132.2 million. Now, of course, the budget was 155 million, so they do have a lot of money they still have to make, but 132 million is still very good. And if it keeps this pace, it is going to make its budget back pretty freaking easily. Of course, going into, a week 2 and maybe even a week 3, we do see obvious drop-offs. People have seen the movie, they're not going to go back and see it 2 or 3 or 4 times, but judging by the amount of hype that has surrounded this film at this point, I do think it is going to hold pretty steadily. Will it come close to this nearly 500 million globally, the first movie made? We don't really know, but at the same time, it's doing very good so far. And not just in regards to the money that it's made and the fact that it did actually blow past the initial expectations, because a few weeks ago we heard that it was aiming to stir up a $55 million debut, so it definitely surpassed that. But if you also start looking at the responses from viewers, the audience score is sitting at a very, very solid 92. So I always say this, I don't trust critics' scores. I either watch something or play something myself instead of taking what they're saying into consideration. And as you can see, the critics gave it a 78%, which isn't awful, but at the same time isn't even close to the 92 audience score. And I have seen quite a few critics mentioning how they thought the movie would have been a little bit stronger with a stronger message. So they're kind of salty. It didn't push a narrative into viewers' faces. That's probably a reason why it didn't get a 90, but audiences are saying it is fantastic with a 92%, which is such an extremely good score. It will be interesting to see over the next few weeks how the movie continues to fare at the box office, if we see a drop going into week 2 or 3, or if it stays pretty consistent, if it even gets close to making as much money as the other Twisters movie at 495 million at the box office. I, of course, will be keeping my eye on this, but it's no surprise to see this massive success when you have someone like the director just saying, hey, listen, we took this general plot, but we decided we didn't want to preach a message, and it has turned out extremely well for them so far. But that's all that I had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.